Armenia.
Armenia, officially the Republic of Armenia, is a mountainous country in the South Caucasus region of Eurasia. Located at the crossroads of Western Asia and Eastern Europe, it is bordered by Turkey to the west, Georgia to the north, the de facto independent Nagorno-Karabakh Republic and Azerbaijan to the east, and Iran and the Azerbaijani exclave of Nakhchivan to the south. Armenia is a unitary, multi-party, democratic nation-state with an ancient cultural heritage. The Kingdom of Armenia became the first state in the world to adopt Christianity as its religion. In the early years of the 4th century, the traditional date is 301 AD. The modern Republic of Armenia recognizes the Armenian Apostolic Church, the world's oldest national church, as the country's primary religious establishment. Armenians have their own unique alphabet invented by Mesrop Mashtots in 405 AD. A former republic of the Soviet Union, Armenia is an emerging democracy and as of 2011 was negotiating with the European Union to become an associate member. It has the right to be an EU member provided it meets necessary standards and criteria. The government of Armenia holds European integration as a key priority in its foreign policy.
Etymology.
The native Armenian name for the country is Haik. The name in the Middle Ages was extended to Hawastan, by addition of the Iranian suffix stan place. The name has traditionally been derived from Haik, the legendary patriarch of the Armenians and a great-great-grandson of Noah, who according to the 5th century author Moses of Karin defeated the Babylonian king Bel in 2492 BC, and established his nation in the Ararat region. The further origin of the name is uncertain. The exonym Armenia is attested in the Old Persian Behistun inscription 515 BC as Armena. Ancient Greek Armenia, Armenia Armenians is first mentioned by Hokkados of Miletus 476 BC. Xenophon, a Greek general serving in some of the Persian expeditions, describes many aspects of Armenian village life and hospitality. He relates that the people spoke a language that to his ear sounded like the language of the Persians. According to the histories of both Moses of Karin and Michael Chamkian, Armenia derives from the name of Aram, a lineal descendant of Haik.
History. Antiquity.
Armenia lies in the highlands surrounding the biblical mountains of Ararat, upon which Noah's Ark is said to have come to rest after the flood. Bible, Gen 8-4. There is evidence of an early civilization in Armenia in the Bronze Age and earlier, dating to about 4000 BC. Archaeological surveys in 2010 and 2011 at the Areni cave complex have resulted in the discovery of the world's earliest known leather shoe, skirt, and wine-producing facility. Several Bronze-era states flourished in the area of Greater Armenia, including the Hittite Empire at the height of its power, Mitanni southwestern historical Armenia, and Hayasa SE 1500 to 1200 BC. The Nari people 12th to 9th centuries BC and the Kingdom of Urartu 1000-600 BC successively established their sovereignty over the Armenian highland. Each of the aforementioned nations and tribes participated in the ethnogenesis of the Armenian people. A large cuneiform lapidary inscription found in Yerevan established that the modern capital of Armenia was founded in the summer of 782 BC by King Argishti I. Yerevan is the world's oldest city to have documented the exact date of its foundation. Around 600 BC, the Kingdom of Armenia was established under the Aranid dynasty. The kingdom reached its height between 95 and 66 BC under Tigranes the Great, becoming one of the most powerful kingdoms of its time within the region. In the next centuries Armenia was in the Persian Empire's sphere of influence. Throughout its history, the Kingdom of Armenia enjoyed both periods of independence and periods of autonomy subject to contemporary empires. Its strategic location between two continents has subjected it to invasions by many peoples, including the Assyrians under Ashurbanipal. At around 669-627 BC, the boundaries of the Assyrian Empire reached as far as Armenia and the Caucasus Mountains. Greeks, Romans, Byzantines, Arabs, Mongols, Persians, Ottoman Turks and Russians. Religion in ancient Armenia was historically related to a set of beliefs which in Persia led to the emergence of Zoroastrianism. It particularly focused on the worship of Mira, Vest and Mithra, and also included a pantheon of native Aryan gods, such as Aramist, Vayan, Anahid, and Asgik. The country used the solar Armenian calendar, which consisted of 12 months. Christianity spread into the country as early as AD 40. King Tiridates III AD 238-314, made Christianity the state religion in AD 301, becoming the first officially Christian state, 10 years before the Roman Empire granted Christianity an official toleration under Galerius, and 36 years before Constantine the Great was baptized. After the fall of the Armenian kingdom in AD 428, most of Armenia was incorporated as a Marzbanate within the Sassanid Empire. Following an Armenian rebellion in AD 451, Christian Armenians maintained their religious freedom, while Armenia gained autonomy.
Middle Ages.
After the Marzbanate period 428-636, Armenia emerged as the Emirate of Armenia, an autonomous principality within the Arabic Empire, reuniting Armenian lands previously taken by the Byzantine Empire as well. The principality was ruled by the Prince of Armenia, recognized by the Caliph and the Byzantine Emperor. It was part of the administrative division Emirate Armenia created by the Arabs, which also included parts of Georgia and Caucasian Albania, and had its center in the Armenian city Dvin. The Principality of Armenia lasted until 884, when it regained its independence from the weakened Arabic Empire. The re-emergent Armenian kingdom was ruled by the Bagratuni dynasty, and lasted until 1045. In time, several areas of the Bagratid Armenia separated as independent kingdoms and principalities, such as the Kingdom of Vaspurakan ruled by the House of Artsruni in the south, Kingdom of Syonik in the east, or Kingdom of Artsakh on the territory of modern Nagorno-Karabakh, while still recognizing the supremacy of the Bagratid kings. In 1045, the Byzantine Empire conquered Bagratid Armenia. Soon, the other Armenian states fell under Byzantine control as well. The Byzantine rule was short-lived, as in 1071 Seljuk Turks defeated the Byzantines and conquered Armenia at the Battle of Manzikert, establishing the Seljuk Empire. To escape death or servitude at the hands of those who had assassinated his relative, Gagik II, king of Ani, an Armenian named Rupin went with some of his countrymen into the gorges of the Taurus Mountains and then into Tarsus of Cilicia. The Byzantine governor of the palace gave them shelter where the Armenian kingdom of Cilicia was eventually established. Cilicia was a strong ally of the European Crusaders, and saw itself as a bastion of Christendom in the east. Cilicia's significance in Armenian history and statehood is also attested by the transfer of the seat of the Catholicos of the Armenian Apostolic Church, spiritual leader of the Armenian people, to the region. The Seljuk Empire soon started to collapse. In the early 12th century, Armenian princes of the Zakharid noble family drove out the Seljuk Turks and established a semi-independent Armenian principality in northern and eastern Armenia, known as Zakharid Armenia, which lasted under the patronage of the Georgian kingdom. The noble family of Orbelines shared control with the Zakharids in various parts of the country, especially in Syonik and Vayatsk-Zor, while the Armenian family of Hazan-Jalayans controlled provinces of Artsakh and Udik as the Kingdom of Artsakh.
Early modern era.
During the 1230s, the Mongol Empire conquered the Zakharian Principality, as well as the rest of Armenia. The Mongolian invasions were soon followed by those of other Central Asian tribes Karakuunlu, Timurid and Akkaunlu, which continued from the 13th century until the 15th century. After incessant invasions, each bringing destruction to the country, with time Armenia became weakened. In the 16th century, the Ottoman Empire in Safavid Persia divided Armenia. From 1604 Abbas I Persia implemented a scorched earth policy in the region to protect his northwestern frontier against any invading Ottoman forces, a policy which involved a forced resettlement of many Armenians outside of their homelands. In 1813 and 1828 the Russian Empire annexed eastern Armenia from Persia, consisting of the Erivan and Karabakh Khanates. Under Ottoman rule, the Armenians were granted considerable autonomy within their own enclaves and lived in relative harmony with other groups in the empire, including the ruling Turks. However, As Christians under a strict Muslim social system, Armenians faced pervasive discrimination. When they began pushing for more rights within the Ottoman Empire, Sultan Abdülhamid I, in response, organized state-sponsored massacres against the Armenians between 1894 and 1896, resulting in an estimated death toll of 80,000 to 300,000 people. The Hamidian massacres, as they came to be known, gave Hamid international infamy as the Red Sultan or Bloody Sultan. The Ottoman Empire began to collapse, and in 1908, the Young Turk Revolution overthrew the government of Sultan Hamid. Armenians living in the empire hoped that the Committee of Union and Progress would change their second-class status. Armenian Reform Package 1914 was presented as a solution by appointing an Inspector General over Armenian issues.
World War I and the Armenian Genocide.
When World War I broke out, leading to confrontation of the Ottoman Empire and the Russian Empire in the Caucasus and Persian campaigns, the new government in Istanbul began to look on the Armenians with distrust and suspicion. This was because the Russian army contained a contingent of Armenian volunteers. On April 24, 1915, Armenian intellectuals were arrested by Ottoman authorities and, with the TEHCIR law May 29, 1915, eventually a large proportion of Armenians living in Anatolia perished in what has become known as the Armenian Genocide. There was local Armenian resistance in the region, developed against the activities of the Ottoman Empire. The events of 1915 to 1917 are regarded by Armenians and the vast majority of Western historians to have been state-sponsored mass killings, or genocide. Turkish authorities, however, maintain that the deaths were the result of a civil war coupled with disease and famine, with casualties incurred by both sides. According to the research conducted by Arnold J. Toynbee, an estimated 600,000 Armenians died during deportation 1915-16. According to the International Association of Genocide Scholars, the death toll was more than 1 million. Armenia and the Armenian diaspora had been campaigning for official recognition of the events as genocide for over 30 years. These events are traditionally commemorated yearly on 24 April, the Armenian Martyr Day, or the Day of the Armenian Genocide.
Democratic Republic of Armenia.
Although the Russian armies succeeded in gaining most of Ottoman Armenia during World War I, their gains were lost with the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917. At the time, Russian-controlled eastern Armenia, Georgia, and Azerbaijan attempted to bond together in the Transcaucasian Democratic Federative Republic. This federation, however, lasted from only February to May 1918, when all three parties decided to dissolve it. As a result, Eastern Armenia became independent as the Democratic Republic of Armenia (DRA) on 28 May. The DRA's short-lived independence was fraught with war, territorial disputes, and a mass influx of refugees from Ottoman Armenia, bringing with them disease and starvation. The Entente powers, appalled by the actions of the Ottoman government, sought to help the newly founded Armenian state through relief funds and other forms of support. At the end of the war, the victorious powers sought to divide up the Ottoman Empire. Signed between the Allied and Associated Powers and Ottoman Empire at Sivas on August 10, 1920, the Treaty of Sivas promised to maintain the existence of the Armenian Republic and to attach the former territories of Ottoman Armenia to it. Because the new borders of Armenia were to be drawn by United States President Woodrow Wilson, Ottoman Armenia is also referred to as Wilsonian Armenia. In addition, just days prior, on August 5, 1920, Miran Damadian of the Armenian National Union, the de facto Armenian administration in Cilicia, declared the independence of Cilicia as an Armenian autonomous republic under French protectorate. There was even consideration of possibly making Armenia a mandate under the protection of the United States. The treaty, however, was rejected by the Turkish national movement, and never came into effect. The movement, under Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, used the treaty as the occasion to declare itself the rightful government of Turkey, replacing the monarchy based in Istanbul with a republic based in Ankara. In 1920, Turkish nationalist forces invaded the fledgling Armenian Republic from the east and the Turkish-Armenian War began. Turkish forces under the command of Nagorno-Karabakh captured Armenian territories that Russia had annexed in the aftermath of the 1877–1878 Russo-Turkish War and occupied the old city of Alexandropol, present-day Gyumri. The violent conflict finally concluded with the Treaty of Alexandropol on December 2, 1920. The treaty forced Armenia to disarm most of its military forces, cede all former Ottoman territory granted to it by the Treaty of Sevres, and to give up all the Wilsonian Armenia granted to it at the Sevres Treaty. Simultaneously, the Soviet 11th Army, under the command of Grigory Ordzhonikidze, invaded Armenia at Karavansarai, present-day Ijevan, on 29 November. By 4 December, Ordzhonikidze's forces entered Yerevan and the short-lived Armenian Republic collapsed.
Soviet Armenia.
Armenia was annexed by Bolshevist Russia, and along with Georgia and Azerbaijan, it was incorporated into the Soviet Union as part of the Transcaucasian SFSR on March 4, 1922. With this annexation, the Treaty of Alexandropol was superseded by the Turkish-Soviet Treaty of Kars. In the agreement, Turkey allowed the Soviet Union to assume control over Adjara with the port city of Batumi in return for sovereignty over the cities of Kars, Ardahan, and Agdir, all of which were part of Russian Armenia. The TSFSR existed from 1922 to 1936, when it was divided up into three separate entities: Armenian SSR, Azerbaijan SSR, and Georgian SSR. Armenians enjoyed a period of relative stability under Soviet rule. They received medicine, food, and other provisions from Moscow, and communist rule proved to be a soothing balm in contrast to the turbulent final years of the Ottoman Empire. The situation was difficult for the Church, which struggled under Soviet rule. After the death of Vladimir Lenin, Joseph Stalin took the reins of power and began an era of renewed fear and terror for Armenians. As with various other ethnic groups who lived in the Soviet Union during Stalin's Great Purge, tens of thousands of Armenians were either executed or deported. Armenia was spared the devastation and destruction that wrought most of the Western Soviet Union during the Great Patriotic War of World War II. The Nazis never reached the South Caucasus, which they intended to do in order to capture the oil fields in Azerbaijan. Still, Armenia played a valuable role in aiding the Allies both through industry and agriculture. An estimated 500,000 Armenians, out of a population of 1.4 million, were mobilized. 175,000 of these men died in the war. Fears decreased when Stalin died in 1953 and Nikita Khrushchev emerged as the Soviet Union's new leader. Soon, life in Soviet Armenia began to see rapid improvement. The church, which suffered greatly under Stalin, was revived when Catholicos Vatskanai assumed the duties of his office in 1955. In 1967, a memorial to the victims of the Armenian genocide was built at the Tsitsernakaberd Hill above the Rastan Gorge in Yerevan. This occurred after mass demonstrations took place on the tragic event's 50th anniversary in 1965. During the Gorbachev era of the 1980s, with the reforms of Glasnost and Perestroika, Armenians began to demand better environmental care for their country, opposing the pollution that Soviet-built factories brought. Tensions also developed between Soviet Azerbaijan and its autonomous district of Nagorno-Karabakh, a majority Armenian region separated by Stalin from Armenia in 1923. About 484,000 Armenians lived in Azerbaijan in 1970. The Armenians of Karabakh demanded unification with Soviet Armenia. Peaceful protests in Yerevan supporting the Karabakh Armenians were met with anti-Armenian pogroms in the Azerbaijani city of Samgate. Compounding Armenia's problems was a devastating earthquake in 1988 with a moment magnitude of 7.2. Gorbachev's inability to alleviate any of Armenia's problems created disillusionment among the Armenians and fed a growing hunger for independence. In May 1990, the new Armenian Armenia was established, serving as a defense force separate from the Soviet Red Army. Clashes soon broke out between the NAA and Soviet Internal Security Forces (MVD) troops based in Yerevan when Armenians decided to commemorate the establishment of the 1918 Democratic Republic of Armenia. The violence resulted in the deaths of 5 Armenians killed in a shootout with the MVD at the railway station. Witnesses there claimed that the MVD used excessive force and that they had instigated the fighting. Further firefights between Armenian militiamen and Soviet troops occurred in Sovetoshan, near the capital, and resulted in the deaths of over 26 people, mostly Armenians. The pogrom of Armenians in Baku in January 1994 forced almost all of the 200,000 Armenians in the Azerbaijani capital Baku to flee to Armenia. On March 17, 1991, Armenia, along with the Baltic states, Georgia and Moldova, boycotted a nationwide referendum in which 78% of all voters voted for the retention of the Soviet Union in a reformed form.
Restoration of independence.
On August 23, 1990, Armenia declared independence, becoming the first non-Baltic republic to secede from the Soviet Union. When, in 1991, the Soviet Union was dissolved, Armenia's independence was officially recognized. However, the initial post-Soviet years were marred by economic difficulties as well as the breakout of a full-scale armed confrontation between the Karabakh Armenians and Azerbaijan Nagorno-Karabakh War. The economic problems had their roots early in the Karabakh conflict when the Azerbaijani Popular Front managed to pressure the Azerbaijan SSR to instigate a railway and air blockade against Armenia. This move effectively crippled Armenia's economy as 85% of its cargo and goods arrived through rail traffic. In 1993, Turkey joined the blockade against Armenia in support of Azerbaijan. The Karabakh War ended after a Russian-brokered ceasefire was put in place in 1994. The war was a success for the Karabakh Armenian forces, who managed to capture 16% of Azerbaijan's internationally recognized territory, including Nagorno-Karabakh itself. Since then, Armenia and Azerbaijan have held peace talks, mediated by the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe (OSCE). The status of Karabakh has yet to be determined. The economies of both countries have been hurt in the absence of a complete resolution, and Armenia's borders with Turkey and Azerbaijan remain closed. By the time both Azerbaijan and Armenia had finally agreed to a ceasefire in 1994, an estimated 30,000 people had been killed and over 1 million had been displaced. As it enters the 21st century, Armenia faces many hardships. It has made a full switch to a market economy and as of 2012, is the 39th most economically free nation in the world. Its relations with Europe, the Middle East, and the Commonwealth of Independent States have allowed Armenia to increase trade. Gas, oil, and other supplies come through two vital routes, Iran and Georgia. Armenia maintains cordial relations with both countries.
Geography.
Armenia is landlocked in the South Caucasus. Located between the Black and Caspian Seas, the country is bordered on the north and east by Georgia and Azerbaijan, and on the south and west by Iran and Turkey.
Location.
Armenia lies between latitudes 38 deg and 42 deg N, and meridians 43 deg and 47 deg E.
Topography.
The Republic of Armenia, covering an area of 29,743 square kilometers (11,484 square miles), is located in the northeast of the Armenian highland. The terrain is mostly mountainous, with fast-flowing rivers and few forests. The climate is highland continental, which means that the country is subjected to hot summers and cold winters. The land rises to 4,090 meters (13,419 feet) above sea level at Mount Ararat, and no point is below 390 meters (1,280 feet) above sea level. Mount Ararat, which was historically part of Armenia, is the highest mountain in the region. Now located in Turkey, but clearly visible in Armenia, it is regarded by the Armenians as a symbol of their land. Because of this, the mountain is present on the Armenian national emblem today.
Environment.
Armenia has established a Ministry of Nature Protection and introduced taxes for air and water pollution and solid waste disposal, whose revenues are used for environmental protection activities. Waste management in Armenia is underdeveloped, as no waste sorting or recycling takes place at Armenia's 60 landfills. Despite the availability of abundant renewable energy sources in Armenia, especially hydroelectric and wind power, the Armenian government is working toward building a new nuclear power plant at Majamar near Yerevan.
Climate.
The climate in Armenia is markedly continental. Summers are dry and sunny, lasting from June to mid-September. The temperature fluctuates between 22 and 36 degc 72 and 97 dgf. However, the low humidity level mitigates the effect of high temperatures. Evening breezes blowing down the mountains provide a welcome refreshing and cooling effect. Springs are short, while autumns are long. Autumns are known for their vibrant and colorful foliage. Winters are quite cold with plenty of snow, with temperatures ranging between -10 and -5 dgc 14 and 23 dgf. Winter sports enthusiasts enjoy skiing down the hills of Tsay-Kadzor, located 30 minutes outside Yerevan. Lake Sevan, nestled up in the Armenian highlands, is the second largest lake in the world relative to its altitude, at 1,900 meters 6,234 feet above sea level.
Government and politics.
Politics of Armenia takes place in a framework of a presidential representative democratic republic. According to the Constitution of Armenia, the president is the head of government and of a multi-party system. Executive power is exercised by the government. Legislative power is vested in both the government and parliament. The unicameral parliament, also called the Askayan Zhughov or National Assembly, is controlled by a coalition of four political parties: the Conservative Republican Party, the Prosperous Armenia Party, the Rule of Law Party and the Armenian Revolutionary Federation. The main opposition party is Rafi Hovhannisyan's Heritage Party, which favors eventual Armenian membership in the European Union and NATO. The Armenian government's stated aim is to build a Western-style parliamentary democracy as the basis of its form of government. It has universal suffrage above the age of 18. International observers of Council of Europe and U.S. Department of State have questioned the fairness of Armenia's parliamentary and presidential elections and constitutional referendums since 1995, citing polling deficiencies, lack of cooperation by the Electoral Commission, and poor maintenance of electoral lists and polling places. Freedom House categorized Armenia in its 2008 report as a semi-consolidated authoritarian regime along with Moldova, Kosovo, Kyrgyzstan, and Russia, and ranked Armenia 20th among 29 nations in transition, with a democracy score of 5.21 out of 7. Represents the lowest democratic progress. Since 1999, Freedom House's democracy score for Armenia has been steadily on the decline from 4.79 to 5.21. Furthermore, Freedom House ranked Armenia as partly free in its 2007 report, though it did not categorize Armenia as an electoral democracy, indicating an absence of relatively free and competitive elections. However, significant progress seems to have been made in the 2008 Armenian presidential election was hailed as largely democratic by OSCE and Western monitors.
Foreign relations.
Armenia presently maintains good relations with almost every country in the world, with two major exceptions being its immediate neighbors, Turkey and Azerbaijan. Tensions were running high between Armenians and Azerbaijanis during the final years of the Soviet Union. The Nagorno-Karabakh war dominated the region's politics throughout the 1990s. The border between the two rival countries remains closed up to this day, and a permanent solution for the conflict has not been reached despite the mediation provided by organizations such as the OSCE. Armenia is a member of more than 40 international organizations, including the United Nations, the Council of Europe, the Asian Development Bank, the Commonwealth of Independent States, the World Trade Organization, World Customs Organization, the Organization of the Black Sea Economic Cooperation, and La Francophonie. It is a member of the CSTO military alliance, and also participates in NATO's Partnership for Peace program. Turkey also has a long history of poor relations with Armenia over its refusal to acknowledge the Armenian genocide. Turkey was one of the first countries to recognize the Republic of Armenia, the Third Republic, after its independence from the USSR in 1991. Despite this, For most of the 20th century and early 21st century, relations remain tense and there are no formal diplomatic relations between the two countries due to Turkey's refusal to establish them for numerous reasons. During the Nagorno-Karabakh War, and citing it as the reason, Turkey closed its land border with Armenia in 1993. It has not lifted its blockade despite pressure from the powerful Turkish business lobby interested in Armenian markets. However, the Armenian airline company Armenia regularly flew between the Zvartnots International Airport at Yerevan and Ataturk International Airport at Istanbul from 2005 until its collapse in 2013. On October 10, 2009, Armenia and Turkey signed protocols on normalization of relationships, which set a timetable for restoring diplomatic ties and reopening their joint border. The ratification of those had to be made in the national parliaments. In Armenia, it passed through the required by legislation approval of the Constitutional Court and was sent to the parliament for the final ratification. The president had made multiple public announcements, both in Armenia and abroad, that as a leader of the political majority of Armenia he assured the ratification of the protocols if Turkey also ratified them. Despite this, the process stopped, as Turkey continuously added more preconditions to its ratification and also delayed it beyond any reasonable time period. Due to its position between two unfriendly neighbors, Armenia has close security ties with Russia. At the request of the Armenian government, Russia maintains a military base in the northwestern Armenian city of Gyumri as a deterrent against Turkey. Despite this, Armenia has also been looking toward Euro-Atlantic structures in recent years. It maintains good relations with the United States, especially through its Armenian diaspora. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, there are 427,822 Armenians living in the country. Because of the blockades by Azerbaijan and Turkey, Armenia continues to maintain solid relations with its southern neighbor Iran, especially in the economic sector. Economic projects such as a gas pipeline going from Iran to Armenia are in time being developed. Armenia is also a member of the Council of Europe, maintaining friendly relations with the European Union, especially with its member states such as France and Greece. A 2005 survey reported that 64% of Armenia's population would be in favor of joining the EU. Several Armenian officials have also expressed the desire for their country to eventually become an EU member state, some predicting that it will make an official bid for membership in a few years. In 2004 its forces joined KFOR, a NATO-led international force in Kosovo. It is also an observer member of the Eurasian Economic Community and the Non-Aligned Movement.
Human rights.
Human rights in Armenia are better than those in most former Soviet republics and have drawn closer to acceptable standards, especially economically. Still, there are several considerable problems. Overall, Armenia's human rights record is similar to that of Georgia's. Armenia has been labeled as partly free by Freedom House.
Military.
The Armenian Army, Air Force, Air Defense, and Border Guard comprise the four branches of the armed forces of the Republic of Armenia. The Armenian military was formed after the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 and with the establishment of the Ministry of Defense in 1992. The Commander-in-Chief of the military is the President of Armenia, Serzh Sargsyan. The Ministry of Defense is in charge of political leadership, currently headed by Colonel General Mikhail Harutunian, while military command remains in the hands of the General Staff, headed by the Chief of Staff, who is currently Lieutenant General Seyran Ahanian. Active forces now number about 81,000 soldiers, with an additional reserve of 32,000 troops. Armenian border guards are in charge of patrolling the country's borders with Georgia and Azerbaijan, while Russian troops continue to monitor its borders with Iran and Turkey. In the case of an attack, Armenia is able to mobilize every able-bodied man between the age of 15 and 59, with military preparedness. The Treaty on Conventional Armed Forces in Europe, which establishes comprehensive limits on key categories of military equipment, was ratified by the Armenian Parliament in July 1992. In March 1993, Armenia signed the Multilateral Chemical Weapons Convention, which calls for the eventual elimination of chemical weapons. Armenia acceded to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty (NPT) as a non-nuclear weapons state in July 1993. Armenia is member of Collective Security Treaty Organization (CSTO) along with Belarus, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Russia, Tajikistan and Uzbekistan. It participates in NATO's Partnership for Peace (PIP) program and is in a NATO organization called Euro-Atlantic Partnership Council (EAPC). Armenia has engaged in a peacekeeping mission in Kosovo as part of non-NATO KFOR troops under Greek command. Armenia also had 46 members of its military peacekeeping forces as a part of the coalition forces in Iraq War until October 2008.
Administrative divisions.
Armenia is divided into 10 provinces: Marzar, singular Mars, with the city Kagak of Yerevan having special administrative status as the country's capital. The chief executive in each of the 10 provinces is the Mars governor, appointed by the government of Armenia. In Yerevan, the chief executive is the mayor, appointed by the president. Within each province are communities Hamankner, singular Hamank. Each community is self-governing and consists of one or more settlements Bnakaver, singular Bnakaver. Settlements are classified as either towns Kagakner, singular Kagak, or villages Gyur, singular Gya. As of 2007, Armenia includes 915 communities, of which 49 are considered urban and 866 are considered rural. The capital, Yerevan, also has the status of a community. Additionally, Yerevan is divided into 12 semi-autonomous districts.
Economy.
The economy relies heavily on investment and support from Armenians abroad. Before independence, Armenia's economy was largely industry-based: chemicals, electronics, machinery, processed food, synthetic rubber, and textile, and highly dependent on outside resources. The Republic had developed a modern industrial sector, supplying machine tools, textiles, and other manufactured goods to sister republics in exchange for raw materials and energy. Recently, the Intel Corporation agreed to open a research center in Armenia, in addition to other technology companies, signaling the growth of a technology industry in Armenia. Agriculture accounted for less than 20% of both net material product and total employment before the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991. After independence, the importance of agriculture in the economy increased markedly, its share at the end of the 1990s rising to more than 30% of GDP and more than 40% of total employment. This increase in the importance of agriculture was attributable to food security needs of the population in the face of uncertainty during the first phases of transition and the collapse of the non-agricultural sectors of the economy in the early 1990s. As the economic situation stabilized and growth resumed, the share of agriculture in GDP dropped to slightly over 20% 2006 data, although the share of agriculture in employment remained more than 40%. Armenian mines produce copper, zinc, gold, and lead. The vast majority of energy is produced with fuel imported from Russia, including gas and nuclear fuel for its one nuclear power plant. The main domestic energy source is hydroelectric. Small deposits of coal, gas, and petroleum exist but have not yet been developed. Like other newly independent states of the former Soviet Union, Armenia's economy suffers from the legacy of a centrally planned economy and the breakdown of former Soviet trading patterns. Soviet investment in and support of Armenian industry has virtually disappeared, so that few major enterprises are still able to function. In addition, the effects of the 1988 Sputnik earthquake, which killed more than 25,000 people and made 500,000 homeless, are still being felt. The conflict with Azerbaijan over Nagorno-Karabakh has not been resolved. The closure of Azerbaijani and Turkish borders has devastated the economy, because Armenia depends on outside supplies of energy and most raw materials. Land routes through Georgia and Iran are inadequate or unreliable. The GDP fell nearly 60% between 1989 and 1993, but then resumed robust growth. The national currency, the dram, suffered hyperinflation for the first years after its introduction in 1993. Nevertheless, the government was able to make wide-ranging economic reforms that paid off in dramatically lower inflation and steady growth. The 1994 ceasefire in the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict has also helped the economy. Armenia has had strong economic growth since 1995, building on the turnaround that began the previous year, and inflation has been negligible for the past several years. New sectors, such as precious stone processing and jewelry making, information and communication technology, and even tourism are beginning to supplement more traditional sectors of the economy, such as agriculture. This steady economic progress has earned Armenia increasing support from international institutions. The International Monetary Fund (IMF), World Bank, European Bank for Reconstruction and Development (EBRD), and other international financial institutions (IFIs) in foreign countries are extending considerable grants and loans. Loans to Armenia since 1993 exceed $1.1 billion. These loans are targeted at reducing the budget deficit and stabilizing the currency. Developing private businesses, energy, agriculture, food processing, transportation, the health and education sectors, and ongoing rehabilitation in the earthquake zone. The government joined the World Trade Organization on February 5, 2003. But one of the main sources of foreign direct investments remains the Armenian diaspora, which finances major parts of the reconstruction of infrastructure and other public projects. Being a growing democratic state, Armenia also hopes to get more financial aid from the Western world. A liberal foreign investment law was approved in June 1994, and a law on privatization was adopted in 1997, as well as a program of state property privatization. Continued progress will depend on the ability of the government to strengthen its macroeconomic management, including increasing revenue collection, improving the investment climate, and making strides against corruption. However, unemployment, which currently stands at around 15%, still remains a major problem due to the influx of thousands of refugees from the Karabakh conflict. Armenia ranked 78th on the 2010 UNDP Human Development Index, the lowest among the Transcaucasian republics. In the 2007 Transparency International Corruption Perceptions Index (CPI), Armenia ranked 99 of 179 countries. In the 2008 Index of Economic Freedom, Armenia ranked 28th, ahead of countries like Austria, France, Portugal and Italy.
Demographics.
Armenia has a population of 3,238,000 2008 and is the second most densely populated of the former Soviet republics. There has been a problem of population decline due to elevated levels of emigration after the breakup of the USSR. However, in the past years, the emigration levels have leveled and there is steady population growth.
Diaspora.
Armenia has a relatively large diaspora, 8 million by some estimates, greatly exceeding the 3 million population of Armenia itself, with communities existing across the globe. The largest Armenian communities outside of Armenia can be found in Russia, France, Iran, the United States, Georgia, Syria, Lebanon, Argentina, Australia, Canada, Greece, Cyprus, Israel, Poland and Ukraine. 40,000 to 70,000 Armenians still live in Turkey, mostly in and around Istanbul. Also, about 1,000 Armenians reside in the Armenian Quarter in the Old City of Jerusalem, a remnant of a once larger community. Italy is home to the San Lazzaro degli Armeni, an island located in the Venetian lagoon, which is completely occupied by a monastery run by the Makatarists, an Armenian Catholic congregation. In addition, approximately 139,000 Armenians live in the de facto country of Nagorno-Karabakh, where they form a majority.
Ethnic groups.
Ethnic Armenians make up 97.9% of the population. Yazidis make up 1.3%, and Russians 0.5%. Other minorities include Assyrians, Ukrainians, Greeks, Kurds, Georgians, and Belarusians. There are also smaller communities of Laks, Mordvins, Ossetians, Udis, and Tats. Minorities of Poles and Caucasus Germans also exist, though they are heavily Russified. During the Soviet era, Azerbaijanis were historically the second largest population in the country, forming about 2.5% in 1989. However, due to the conflict over Nagorno-Karabakh, virtually all of them emigrated from Armenia to Azerbaijan. Conversely, Armenia received a large influx of Armenian refugees from Azerbaijan, thus giving Armenia a more homogeneous character.
Languages.
Armenian is the only official language, even though Russian is widely used, especially in education, and could be considered as de facto second language. 94% of adult Armenians consider it important that their children learn Russian.
Health.
Life expectancy at birth was at 70 for males and at 76 for females in 2006. Health expenditure was at about 5.6% of the GDP in 2004. Most of this was outside the private sector. Government expenditure on health was at $112 per person in 2006.
Religion.
Armenia was the first nation to adopt Christianity as a state religion, an event traditionally dated to AD 301. The predominant religion in Armenia is Christianity. The roots of the Armenian Church go back to the 1st century. According to tradition, the Armenian Church was founded by two of Jesus' 12 apostles, Thaddeus and Bartholomew, who preached Christianity in Armenia between AD 40–60. Because of these two founding apostles, the official name of the Armenian Church is Armenian Apostolic Church. Over 93% of Armenian Christians belong to the Armenian Apostolic Church, a form of Oriental non-Chalcedonian Orthodoxy, which is a very ritualistic, conservative church, roughly comparable to the Coptic and Syriac churches. Armenian Apostolic Church is in communion only with a group of churches within Oriental Orthodoxy. Other religious denominations in Armenia are the Baptists and Presbyterians. Catholics also exist in Armenia, both Latin Rite and Mekhitarist Catholics. The Mekhitarists, also spelled Mekhitarists Armenian, Mkhitaryan, are a congregation of Benedictine monks of the Armenian Catholic Church founded in 1712 by Mekhitar of Sebaste. They are best known for their series of scholarly publications of ancient Armenian versions of otherwise lost ancient Greek texts. The Armenian Catholic denomination is headquartered in Bzumar, Lebanon. The Yazidi Kurds, who live in the western part of the country, practice Yazidism. There are also non-Yazidi Kurds who practice Sunni Islam. There is a Jewish community in Armenia diminished to 750 persons since independence, with most emigrants leaving for Israel. There are currently 2 synagogues in Armenia, in the capital, Yerevan, and in the city of Sevan located near Lake Sevan.
Education.
In its first years of independence, Armenia made uneven progress in establishing systems to meet its national requirements in social services. Education, held in particular esteem in Armenian culture, changed fastest of the social services, while health and welfare services attempted to maintain the basic state plan structure of the Soviet era. A literacy rate of 100% was reported as early as 1960. In the communist era, Armenian education followed the standard Soviet model of complete state control from Moscow of curricula and teaching methods and close integration of education activities with other aspects of society, such as politics, culture, and the economy. As in the Soviet period, primary and secondary education in Armenia is free, and completion of secondary school is compulsory. In the 1988-89 school year, 301 students per 10,000 population were in specialized secondary or higher education, a figure slightly lower than the Soviet average. In 1989, some 58% of Armenians over age 15 had completed their secondary education, and 14% had a higher education. In the 1990-91 school year, the estimated 1,307 primary and secondary schools were attended by 608,800 students. Another 70 specialized secondary institutions had 45,900 students, and 68,400 students were enrolled in a total of 10 post-secondary institutions that included universities. In addition, 35% of eligible children attended preschools. In 1992, Armenia's largest institution of higher learning, Yerevan State University, had 18 departments, including ones for social sciences, and law. Its faculty numbered about 1,300 teachers and its student population about 10,000 students. The Yerevan Architecture and Civil Engineering Institute was founded in 1989. In the early 1990s, Armenia made substantial changes to the centralized and regimented Soviet system. Because at least 98% of students in higher education were Armenian, curricula began to emphasize Armenian history and culture. Armenian became the dominant language of instruction, and many schools that had taught in Russian closed by the end of 1991. Russian was still widely taught, however, as a second language. On the basis of the expansion and development of Yerevan State University, a number of higher educational independent institutions were formed, including Medical Institute, separated in 1930, which was set up on the basis of medical faculty. In 1980, Yerevan State Medical University was awarded one of the main rewards of the former USSR, the Order of Labor Red Banner, for training qualified specialists in healthcare and valuable service in the development of medical science. In 1995, YSMI was renamed to YSMU, and since 1989 it has been named after Mkhitar Heretsi, the famous medieval doctor. Mkhitar Heretsi was the founder of Armenian Medical School in Cilician, Armenia. The great doctor played the same role in Armenian medical science as Hippocrates in Western, Galen in Roman, Ibn Sina in Arabic medicine. Foreign Students Department for Armenian Diaspora, established in 1957, later was enlarged and the enrollment of foreign students began. Nowadays the YSMU is a medical institution corresponding to international requirements, trains medical staff for not only Armenia and neighbor countries, that is Iran, Syria, Lebanon, Georgia, but also many other leading countries all over the world. A great number of foreign students from India, Nepal, Sri Lanka, the USA and Russian Federation study together with Armenian students. Nowadays the university is ranked among famous higher medical institutions and takes its honorable place in the World Directory of Medical Schools published by the WHO. Other schools in Armenia include the American University of Armenia and the QSI International School of Yerevan. The American University of Armenia has graduate programs in business and law, among others. The institution owes its existence to the combined efforts of the government of Armenia, the Armenian General Benevolent Union, U.S. Agency for International Development, and the University of California. The extension programs and the library at AUA form a new focal point for English-language intellectual life in the city.
Culture.
Armenians have their own distinctive alphabet and language. The alphabet was invented in AD 405 by Mesrop Mashtots and consists of 39 letters, 3 of which were added during the Cilician period. 96% of the people in the country speak Armenian, while 75.8% of the population additionally speaks Russian, although English is becoming increasingly popular.
Music and dance.
Armenian music is a mix of indigenous folk music, perhaps best represented by Jivan Gasparian's well-known Dudic music, as well as light pop, and extensive Christian music. Instruments like the duduk, the dol, the zurna, and the kenon are commonly found in Armenian folk music. Artists such as Ayad Nova are famous due to their influence in the development of Armenian folk music. One of the oldest types of Armenian music is the Armenian chant, which is the most common kind of religious music in Armenia. Many of these chants are ancient in origin, extending to pre-Christian times, while others are relatively modern, including several composed by Saint Mesrop Mashtots, the inventor of the Armenian alphabet. Whilst under Soviet rule, Armenian classical music composer Aram Katkatorian became internationally well known for his music, for various ballets and the saber dance from his composition for the ballet Gawen. The Armenian genocide caused widespread emigration that led to the settlement of Armenians in various countries in the world. Armenians kept to their traditions and certain diasporans rose to fame with their music. In the post-genocide Armenian community of the United States, the so-called cave-style Armenian dance music, using Armenian and Middle Eastern folk instruments, often electrified, amplified and some Western instruments, was popular. This style preserved the folk songs and dances of Western Armenia, and many artists also played the contemporary popular songs of Turkey and other Middle Eastern countries from which the Armenians emigrated. Richard Hagopian is perhaps the most famous artist of the traditional cave style, and the Vospikian band was notable in the 1940s and 1950s for developing their own style of cave music heavily influenced by the popular American big band jazz of the time. Later, stemming from the Middle Eastern Armenian diaspora and influenced by continental European, especially French pop music, the Armenian pop music genre grew to fame in the 1960s and 1970s, with artists such as Adis Harmandian and Harald Pambukjian performing to the Armenian diaspora and Armenia. Also with artists such as Sirusho, performing pop music combined with Armenian folk music in today's entertainment industry. Other Armenian diasporans that rose to fame in classical or international music circles are world-renowned French-Armenian singer and composer Charles Aznavour, pianist Sagan Arsrouni, prominent opera sopranos such as Hazmek Papian, and more recently Isabel Bayrak-Darian and Anna Kassian. Certain Armenians settled to sing non-Armenian tunes such as the heavy metal band System of a Down, which nonetheless often incorporates traditional Armenian instrumentals and styling into their songs, or pop star share. In the Armenian diaspora, Armenian revolutionary songs are popular with the youth. These songs encourage Armenian patriotism and are generally about Armenian history and national heroes.
Art.
Yerevan Vernissage Arts and Crafts Market, close to Republic Square, bustles with hundreds of vendors selling a variety of crafts on weekends and Wednesdays, though the selection is much reduced midweek. The market offers wood carving, antiques, fine lace, and the hand-knotted wool carpets and kilims that are a Caucasus specialty. Obsidian, which is found locally, is crafted into assortment of jewelry and ornamental objects. Armenian goldsmithery enjoys a long tradition, populating one corner of the market with a selection of gold items. Soviet relics and souvenirs of recent Russian manufacture, nesting dolls, watches, enamel boxes and so on, are also available at the vernissage. Across from the Opera House, a popular art market fills another city park on the weekends. Armenia's long history as a crossroads of the ancient world has resulted in a landscape with innumerable fascinating archaeological sites to explore. Medieval, Iron Age, Bronze Age and even Stone Age sites are all within a few hours' drive from the city. All but the most spectacular remain virtually undiscovered, allowing visitors to view churches and fortresses in their original settings. The National Art Gallery in Yerevan has more than 16,000 works that date back to the Middle Ages, which indicate Armenia's rich tales and stories of the times. It houses paintings by many European masters as well. The Modern Art Museum, the Children's Picture Gallery, and the Martiros Saroyan Museum are only a few of the other noteworthy collections of fine art on display in Yerevan. Moreover, many private galleries are in operation, with many more opening every year, featuring rotating exhibitions and sales. On April 13, 2013, the Armenian government announced a change in law to allow freedom of panorama for 3D works of art.
Sport.
A wide array of sports are played in Armenia, the most popular among them being wrestling, weightlifting, judo, association football, chess, and boxing. Armenia's mountainous terrain provides great opportunities for the practice of sports like skiing and climbing. Being a landlocked country, water sports can only be practiced on lakes, notably Lake Sevan. Competitively, Armenia has been successful in chess, weightlifting and wrestling at the international level. Armenia is also an active member of the international sports community, with full membership in the Union of European Football Associations UEFA and International Ice Hockey Federation IIHF. It also hosts the Pan-Armenian Games. Prior to 1992, Armenians would participate in the Olympics representing the USSR. As part of the Soviet Union, Armenia was very successful, winning plenty of medals and helping the USSR win the medal standings at the Olympics on numerous occasions. The first medal won by an Armenian in modern Olympic history was by Grant Shahinian, sometimes spelled as Grant Shahinian, who won 2 golds and 2 silvers in gymnastics at the 1952 Summer Olympics in Helsinki. To highlight the level of success of Armenians in the Olympics, Shayanin was quoted as saying, "Armenian sportsmen had to outdo their opponents by several notches for the shot at being accepted into any Soviet team. But those difficulties notwithstanding, 90% of Armenians athletes on Soviet Olympic teams came back with medals." Armenia first participated at the 1992 Summer Olympics in Barcelona under a unified CIS team, where it was very successful, winning 3 golds and 1 silver in weightlifting, wrestling and sharpshooting, despite only having 5 athletes. Since the 1994 Winter Olympics in Lillehammer, Armenia has participated as an independent nation. Armenia participates in the Summer Olympic Games in boxing, wrestling, weightlifting, judo, gymnastics, track and field, diving, swimming and sharpshooting. It also participates in the Winter Olympic Games in alpine skiing, cross-country skiing and figure skating. Football is also popular in Armenia. The most successful team was the FC Ararat Yerevan team of the 1970s, who won the Soviet Cup in 1973 and 1975 and the Soviet Top League in 1973. The latter achievement saw FC Ararat gain entry to the European Cup where, despite a home victory in the second leg, they lost on aggregate at the quarter-final stage to eventual winner FC Bayern Munich. Armenia competed internationally as part of the USSR national football team until the Armenian national football team was formed in 1992 after the split of the Soviet Union. Armenia have never qualified for a major tournament, although recent improvements saw the team to achieve 44th position in the FIFA World Rankings in September 2011. The national team is controlled by the Football Federation of Armenia. The Armenian Premier League is the highest-level football competition in Armenia, and has been dominated by FC Pionik in recent seasons. The league currently consists of 8 teams and relegates to the Armenian First League. Armenia and the Armenian diaspora have produced many successful footballers, including Yuri Djorkaeff, Alain Baghashian, Andronik Eskandarian, Andronik Timurian, Edgar Manacharyan and Nikita Simonian. Djorkaeff and Baghashian won the 1998 FIFA World Cup with France. Andronik Timurian competed in the 2006 World Cup for Iran and Edgar Manacharyan played in the Dutch Eredivisie for Ajax. Wrestling has been a successful sport in the Olympics for Armenia. At the 1996 Summer Olympics in Atlanta, Arman Nazarian won the gold in the men's Greco-Roman flyweight 52 kg category and Arman Mkrtchyan won the silver in men's freestyle paperweight 48 kg category, securing Armenia's first 2 medals in its Olympic history. Traditional Armenian wrestling is called kok and practiced in traditional garb. It was one of the influences included in the Soviet combat sport of sambo, which is also very popular. The government of Armenia budgets about $2.8 million annually for sports and gives it to the National Committee of Physical Education and Sports, the body that determines which programs should benefit from the funds. Due to the lack of success lately on the international level, in recent years, Armenia has rebuilt 16 Soviet-era sports schools and furnished them with new equipment for a total cost of $1.9 million. The rebuilding of the regional schools was financed by the Armenian government. $9.3 million has been invested in the resort town of Tsakhadsar to improve the winter sports infrastructure because of dismal performances at recent winter sports events. In 2005, a cycling center was opened in Yerevan with the aim of helping produce world-class Armenian cyclists. The government has also promised a cash reward of $700,000 to Armenians who win a gold medal at the Olympics. Armenia is very successful in chess, and their men's team is the current world champion. Armenia had